this is Rowye at Digital Rowye. It's been a long time since I wanted to do a voiced video, so here it goes. This is mostly a commentary. It's not really a tutorial, so it's assuming that you know Photoshop and DAZ 3D at least a little bit, and so I hope it's helpful. Let's get to it. So what I'm gonna do is mostly guide you through the whole process of turning the render at the left side into the fully fledged artwork at the right side. As you can see, the render by itself, it already looks quite nice. It's quite complete, but first we have to create it. So let's go into DAZ and see how that works. So the first thing I want to do in DAZ Studio is basically just get the shapes of the characters, find basic things like the hair and the overall shape. As you see, I'm first working on the woman, which is going to be the main motif of the artwork, and the skeleton is there just for the head. So I want to hide everything and let my computer work at its best. That's the same reason why I hide the woman's hair. I just don't want anything there sucking up resources from the computer, since I'm gonna load up more models, and obviously the more you have on screen, the slower it's gonna be. So as you see, I'm going for the pose. This was my first idea of the artwork. It was not really gonna be the same shot that you see in the finished artwork. I was thinking more of a frontal shot of a woman, like with, you know, like the hair in front of her face and just like sort of hugging this creepy skull and stuff. But as it usually happens, as you start working, ideas start to come up and things just change, and most of the time I hope it's for the best. So here I'm starting already to look into different angles. I'm adding a new character. I just made a copy of the old one and then changed the pose. You know, I'm just experimenting, seeing what might work, what might not. As you see, I'm moving the camera around and trying to figure out what works. And while we watch this fancy defaults hair animation, which serves basically just to simulate how hair would behave in the real world, I'm just about to go into lighting for the piece. And mostly what I do with lighting is I'm trying to find an sort of easy, fast way that I know works, and that's by a lot of the time is by using complementary colors like, you know, magenta and green, or like in this case orange and blue. And I know this combination works, and I usually go for that first, and maybe then, you know, later on I might experiment. But this is generally a good pick, at least for like darkish sort of scenes. It doesn't even matter if you have blue as the main light and orange as the backlight, or vice versa. It's just a good combination of colors, so feel free to play with that. So by the pose of the new model, I know that she's going to be holding something. I want that to be the main light source of the artwork. And so even if she doesn't have anything in her hand, I can just place the light in here. And so this way I already know that when I get to Photoshop, all the lighting is going to be sorted out, because all the work has been done in DAZ, and that's so comfortable. So I try to get as much as I can done in DAZ, and then once I get to Photoshop, it's just mostly about tweaking it and mostly making it look great. And so here you see I'm starting to add new copies of the main model. For the first one, I'm just pretty much going to use the same pose. She got some new arms pose and new hand pose, but it's the same for pretty much the whole body. And then the next one, I'm just going to try some new pose. Just don't want all of it to look the same. But these are going to be background figures, and I'm not even gonna render them at the same time. I'm gonna do two different renders so I don't have to worry about masking in Photoshop. So you saw I also added a big cube in there that's in between one of the lights and the model, so I'm creating a little bit of shadow in the areas I want, like the the ends of the feet and the bottom parts, which I don't want to have a lot of backlight in them. And this is pretty much ready for rendering, and here it goes. The process is cut, and so I'm gonna hide that and add the other two models and render that and go to Photoshop. And in Photoshop, the first thing I want to do is set up the scene, and that's mostly in this case working on the background. And what I'm trying to do first of all is find the levels and the dark and bright areas. I'm also trying to throw in some color, just because I don't want to stick only with the blue and orange. I kind of wanted something more vivid and something that would call the eye, that would pop up. And so I'm also building the structure. As you see, I've done like some straight vertical lines, simulating the orange light coming from the left side, and some greens, that could be coming out from the more of an ambient light. And then I'm working on the windows, and as you saw, I used a photo in there. And what I do with this kind of artwork is I don't really want it to have a lot of detail, because everything else is not gonna have a lot of detail. So I just pick up a brush with a little bit of texture and pick colors from the background, pick colors from the same photo, try to get rid of some of the detail in the photo. I definitely don't want the photo to stand out more than the characters in here. So it's good not to have a lot of detail in the background for character artworks like this one. And this is probably why this window I'm trying now just doesn't work for me. I was not happy with the arch before, and so I decided to try new stuff. But as much as I like the lighting on this one, it just has way too much intricate detail for me. So, but I choose to leave these in the video because I think it's interesting for people to see that everyone makes mistakes. Some things just don't work. You gotta try them out to know if it's gonna work or not. At this point I knew that I didn't like something in the background though, but I tried for a while, and after a while I just decided to let it be because nothing was working out for me. So I just go and work on something else and decide to come back later, and that's when I started to add these vibrant colors down at by the bottom, and I reinforce some of those textures I added before that give this sort of misty look to it. Then I go for some color adjustments. I'm a bit tired of looking at the image as is. I want to feel really how it's gonna look when it's finished, or how it may look. So I start with some color lookup layers, and then I go with the Nik plugins. Both things I use very much nowadays, but I'll get into those later as we're gonna have a lot of time. For now, let's get back to the process at hand. So this is pretty much what I envision it like. I'm still messing around with just trying some filters, seeing if anything is gonna work or maybe give me some new idea. And then I just disable all of that and get back to work as it was. As you see, I'm still worried about the window, seeing if it works or not. And then I start going over the 3D figures and partly taking detail off of them and partly adding a little bit of my own creativity to them. So, and I just want to make them look better, because the renders are fine, but I don't spend a lot of time on them because I know I'm gonna be on Photoshop, and there's plenty of stuff that's way easier and faster done in Photoshop than it is in DAZ. So in the end, you want to find what kind of things work in one medium and what kind of things work in the other, and take advantage of both. Things like the hair, for instance, would be quite hard to get 100% right on DAZ because it just takes a lot of time to simulate. Or if you're using a normal item, you just have to battle the sliders. But in Photoshop, I can just pick up a brush and just paint it in. If I don't like it, I delete it and start over, which is, what I just did in the video. It's just much easier, and so, like, for instance, I wanted to cover the breast because I don't want this image to be tagged as mature in most places. So I knew I was going to have hair in front of it, but I'm not going to try to do that in DAZ because it's going to take me a long time. So I'm just going to go in Photoshop and add the hair after the fact. And again, what I'm doing is mostly just going over the 3D model and painting over it with a brush. I use a brush that has some texture in it. It's uneven. It's not a round brush. It has a bit of shape, a bit of texture. It gets grainy if you don't press a lot with the stylus. So in that way, I also get some texture in, which is not present with the 3D. That said, I'm mostly a photo manipulator, so I'm not the greatest painter out there. So I'm mostly, a lot of the time I stick to the 3D model. I just try to make it better. I try to take away the 3D look it has, which has a lot to do with the fact that 3D makes things look sort of better than they would ever be in real life. Nothing. The 3D doesn't have any blemishes or everything is like too perfect, and the human eye can tell very easily when you see a 3D image. I mean, it has to be a really, really good render for the human eye to not be able to tell if it's a 3D figure or not. So since I'm not gonna go for the photorealistic way, I'm just gonna make it like a picture, like more like painterly. And so that's what I do. I pick up a brush and I paint on it. And some areas I use a small brush, some areas I use big brush, like right now, because it's an area that maybe doesn't have a lot of detail, so I don't need to put a lot of attention in it. And then I recreate the reflections, but I take away the 3D ones because they're too obviously 3D. So I just really don't want them there, and they're good as a reference, but they just need to go. And so I'm gonna keep doing this for all the figures in there. I've done the 3 already, and this is the last one I haven't touched yet. She had some reflections that were very, very telling of the 3D nature of it. So, again, I just painted over it. So now mostly we have the hair that's not very good as it is. So I just, just delete it and pick up a brush, paint over it. You don't really require a lot of detail. I mean, I take hints from what was there, and then I just paint over it, and just try to again take the 3D look away from it. And when I'm done with that, I look at the whole image and I look back at the hair, and I'm like, well, the one I just did it looks quite nice, so what's up with the other vampire? And then I think I'm fine with the hair at the top, but I'm not quite fine with the hair in the chest area, so I try a new way to add it in. So I'm just warping it, and then I add in the reflections and all, and at the end I just check out the other hair around and paint some grainy reflections in it so that it will match everything else. And in the end, that's what it's about. It's not so much what you're painting isolated, but it's how it interacts with the rest of your artwork and what kind of contrast it is creating with other elements of your piece. So the same way it works with colors, it works with everything else, texture and so forth. And then I'm going for the last thing I haven't touched yet, which is the cross. And the cross was made using 3D from Photoshop itself. I don't know if this was noticeable. It was kind of fast in the video, so you might have missed it, but it was just very simple. I just draw a flat cross and then extrude it. But obviously it looks like very, very boring as it was. The flat lines are not realistic at all, and it didn't match with the rest of the artwork. So again, I paint over it, and then I play a bit with atmospheric effects for it and with the light. I try to insert some new color, like a stronger blue color, and then I'm also trying some new colors on the models. And finally I decided to use these only for the dark areas in some parts of the main models, and then I'm going back to trying stuff out with the color lookup layers. Color lookup layers are just basically a table of color equivalences, so it will take the colors you have and convert them to different colors. So what I usually do is I set the layer mode to color, because some of these filters will affect the lighting of your piece. And then I just play with those. A lot of the time I'm not using them at full opacity. I go until I find one that I like, and then I try another one on top of that, and if I like it, I'll keep it. If not, I'll delete it. And pretty much the same philosophy with the Nik plugins. Nik plugins used to be owned by Google, and they used to be free, so that's the version I have. I know that you can download the free version still nowadays, and it's legal to do so. Just you gotta do a little bit of research and you'll get there. So for the Nik plugins, I start with Color FX, and within Color FX I use classical soft focus a lot. I use the levels filter just because it's more of a mix of levels and curves, but it has a pretty nice feel to it. I also use the low key filter, and then there are several color adjustment tools within Color FX that can be helpful in many situations. So after that I go with the output sharpener. It's nothing super special, just a sharpener. You can touch structure and other fun stuff, and then I use a little bit of color aberration from Analog FX2, and that's about it for Nik. And so the last touches for this one, I just used levels layer. I raised the levels of the whole piece because I wanted to pop the colors up, and I did that with a hue saturation layer. So this was it for the video. Thank you so much everyone who stayed here until the end. Let me know in the comments if you liked it. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and have a good one.